Hi, I'm Adam from Ace Engineering, and this is the installation video for our Ace JK Pro Series rear bumper. So here's what's included in your rear bumper tire kit assembly. Your tire stanchion, heim joint, all the necessary hardware for the frame mount and cross member tie-in, the nut plate, the gate plate with cradle assembly, and the tire carrier itself, and of course your rear bumper. We're going to start the process by removing the factory bumper and factory tire carrier. If you have the LED light option, we're going to grind down the frame in this area for clearance for the LED lights. This particular bumper has LED light provisions. We're going to install those first. We're going to drop our LED light bar into the existing tabs. Now that the light is in place, we're going to tighten the nuts on both sides. Make sure that your cords are on the inside of the bumper. Once they're installed in the bumper, they should look like this. Now we're ready to install the bumper up into the frame rails. Before putting the bumper into position, we want to drill out these two locations for the nut plate with a 1/2 inch drill through the top. The holes are already open on the bottom. After drilling the top two holes, we're going to drill this hole and this hole with the same drill bit, just for ease of installation. All right, we're going to set the bumper up into the frame rails, just enough to access our connections to our lights. And now at this time, you run the electrical connection before sliding the bumper all the way into the frame. At this point, we've got the lights wired up, so if you have the light provisions and they're installed, now's a good time to check to make sure they work. In this case, we tied them into the backup lights, so check that's good. We can slide the bumper on now. This is the area where the nut plate will go. The bolts come up through the bumper and tie into the nut plate. It goes in this location here. We're going to go ahead and put this in place. Due to the coilover setup we have, we can't access it from the back. You should be able to access it from the top of the bumper, top of the frame through the back of the bumper. Make sure the bumper is securely up against the frame, and now we'll add some hardware to anchor it into place. Now that we've got our bumper in place, we're going to grab our 7/16 bolts and attach the bumper to the frame. 2 bolts through the bottom of the bumper, through the frame, into the nut plate we just put in place. The other 2 bolts go through the back of the frame into the bumper. Here are the 4 bolts in location with the bolt, lock washer, and washer. 2 on the back, 2 from the bottom. Now that we've got the center of the bumper tied in, we're going to move the frame rails on each side. 2 5/8 bolts with lock washer and washer right in this location on the side of the frame. Now we're going to move on to the gate plate assembly. We're going to take our nylon cradle and install it with chamfer side down, and then take our 2 supplied 3/8 bolts, washers, and lock washers and install it into the location. Now we're going to put the gate plate onto the Jeep. We're going to reuse that factory hardware that took off your factory tire carrier. Orientation of the nylon cradle goes in that direction. And this gate plate works with the horizontal and the vertical vent, depending on the model year of the Jeep. I will tighten all the 13mm bolts into location. All right, now that we've got the gate plate in location, it's time to drop the carrier into the bumper. First thing you want to do is take your lube and lube up the spindle itself to help it drop into the oil-impregnated bronze bearings. After we drop this into location, you can access the Zerk fitting on the back of the bumper in order to lube it thoroughly. This is just for ease of install. All right, now that we've got the spindle lubed up, we're also going to lube up the bearing bronze on the inside of the bumper. And this should be a tight fit. Once you get it started, you might have to work it back and forth to drop it in, but that's built like that for a reason. We don't want any rattles or shimmies or shakes back there. Go ahead and move it back and forth. All right, now you're through the first bearing. There's another bearing that's pressed in from the bottom. Now we'll work through that. Now that we're through the first bearing, we're going to gently tap it down through the second bearing with a rubber mallet. Now that the spindle's in place, we're going to attach our large washer and 3/4 inch nut from the bottom of the bumper. Any gap that's in the bottom of the tire carrier to the bumper is going to be drawn down now with the nut. Now that the spindle's tightened down, the Zerk fitting is located on the back of the spindle support in the center of the bumper. You can access it right here behind the bumper. So we're going to attach to the Zerk fitting and fill it full of grease. Now we're going to attach the heim joint to the gate plate using our 1/2 inch bolts, washer, and lock washers. The spacers that are supplied, go on top of the heim joint in between the top tab. Bolt, lock washer, tab, spacer, heim joint. Large washer, nut. Once we've got the heim joint inserted, tighten everything down. Now we're going to feed the heim joint through the tire carrier and bolt it into place. You'll have two separate size washers, a large spacer and a narrow spacer. Large washer spacer on bottom, narrow spacer on top. Now that we've got the large spacer on the bottom, the thinner spacer on the top, we can insert our 1/2-inch bolt with lock washer through the top. Through, large washer, and nut. And we'll go ahead and tighten this down next. Now that we've got this together, we're going to move on to the adjustment side. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at this heim joint in the closed position and make sure that the lower tube is cradled in the nylon cradle. So we're going to go ahead and shut the door. And right now we're a little high on the cradle, so we're going to adjust the gate plate, and then we're also going to adjust the heim joint until the bottom tube is seated inside the cradle. All right, we're going to loosen the jam nuts on each side of the turnbuckle. It's a right hand and left hand thread, so we can tighten it to draw in the tire carrier, loosen it to extend the tire carrier. In this situation, we're going to tighten it to draw it in a little further. Open and close the door till you have a nice tight fit inside the cradle. When you're happy with that adjustment, we're going to go ahead and tighten the jam nuts back down. Now that we've got it adjusted, you can see the lower tube seats nicely inside the cradle. Now we're going to put the tire stanchion into place using 4 1/2-inch bolts that are provided. Bolt through, lock washer on the back, along with the nut. 4 locations, 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom. When you tighten these down, hold the head of the bolt still, run the nut together so you don't want to scratch the powder coat on the other side. All right, now we're going to move the tire under the tire stanchion. Tighten your 3 lugs down to put your tire into place, and then we'll move on to adjustment of the tire itself. Okay, now tire's into position. We're going to unloosen this bolt in order to adjust the telescoping stanchion. We're going to tighten this bolt to draw the stanchion in until the tire snugs up against the tire carrier, and then tighten back down the set screw. Now that we've got the adjustment drawn in by tightening this bolt and drawing the tire in tight, now we can just run down the set screw to hold it into place. Well, that's it. That's the installation of our rear bumper tire carrier Pro Series bumper. If you have any questions, feel free to give us a call, and thanks so much for looking.